Yes, welcome for months for our 8th lesson under cell physiology. Today we are going to cover the role of diffusion in living organisms. The role of diffusion in living organisms. So the objective of our session today is to discuss the role of diffusion in living organisms. So how is this process important to the living organisms? That is what we are going to discuss, the role of diffusion in living organisms. Now, so we are going to divide the roles into different parts. One, we are going to talk of absorption of materials. Absorption of materials in living organisms. For example, we know that there is absorption taking place after digestion. We also know that there is absorption that occur in the plant roots. That is absorption of mineral salts. Then we are also going to cover gaseous exchange in plants and animals. And those are going to form the major part of our discussion. Now, one of the major roles of the process of diffusion is to assist in the absorption of materials. And now we ask ourselves, absorption of materials where? So one of the parts or one of the areas in living organisms where absorption occurs is in the plant roots. One of the areas where absorption occurs is in the plant roots. And what is absorbed in the plant roots? So in the plant roots, the plants normally absorb water and mineral salts. And we know that these two substances are very important in the process of photosynthesis. So water and mineral salts are absorbed in the soil by a process called diffusion. Now, this occurs where the minerals are more concentrated in the soil than in the root hairs. Now, we have cases where if you take the root hairs, if this one is the root hair cell, and we know that the root hair cell is elongated, and the root hair cell has a sub-vacuole, It has the nucleus. Then the root hair cell is surrounded by soil particles. These are soil particles. And the soil particles, we have water molecules. And we also have minerals. So a case where we have, for example, sodium ions, where we have more sodium ions in the soil than in the cell sap of the root hair cells. Therefore, the particles of the mineral ions will move from a region of low or a region of high concentration, that is in the soil, into the plant cell sap, the root hair cell sap, by the process that we call diffusion. So through diffusion, minerals which are highly concentrated in the soil than the root hair cells. Those minerals simply move freely from a region of high concentration into the root hair cells where their concentration is low. So we say that diffusion is one of the processes by which mineral ions move from the soil into the plant root hair cell. That is what we are saying. So that process is very important in the absorption of mineral salts from the soil into the root hair cells so that they can be transported or they can be conducted to the leaves for use during photosynthesis. So this one here is just a picture of part of the root hair, part of the roots. We have the soil. These are soil particles. In between the soil particles, we have the solution. And this solution, which is the soil solution, contains dissolved minerals. And in case the minerals are more concentrated in the soil than in the cell sap of the root hair, then the minerals will move into the root hair cell by osmosis, moving from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. So after that, the minerals will diffuse again into the cortex cells. These are the cortex cells. Then across the endodermis cells and into this tube. This tube, which is called the xylem, it runs from the roots to the plant leaves. So that is part of the plant. Now, another role of diffusion is the absorption of soluble, the soluble products of digestion, those soluble products of digestion, e.g. glucose, which is a product of breakdown of carbohydrates. Then we have amino acids, which are the products of digestion of proteins. So these substances are absorbed across the epithelial lining of the intestinal villi. Now, last time we talked about the epithelial tissue, and we said epithelial tissues covers the walls, the internal walls of various organs and parts of the body. So one of the organs in the body that has a layer that covers it, that is called an epithelial layer or epithelial lining, is the intestines. And in the intestines, we have finger-like structure that we call villi. We all know that most of the absorption of food materials, digested food materials, occur where? In the small intestine. And most of these materials, they are absorbed by the process of diffusion. So we are saying absorption of soluble products of digestion, e.g. glucose and amino acids, across the epithelial lining of the intestinal walls occur by the process of diffusion. Now here is the diagram of the digestive system. And remember, digestion starts in the mouth. No absorption occurs in the mouth. When the food reaches down in the stomach we have things like water, which are absorbed in the stomach, but the main absorption, the large percentage of absorption of food occurs in the small intestine. So, we have a large quantity. We have a large quantity of food materials if this one is the small intestine. Now, the walls of the small intestine has a rich supply of blood. So if this is the blood, so we'll say that for example, if these are the glucose particles, these are the glucose, this is the ileum, small intestine. So what happens if we have higher concentration of glucose? High concentration of glucose inside the small intestine, and in the blood we have low glucose concentration. So what happens? The glucose particles will diffuse from where their concentration is high to where their concentration is low. So we can say that, or we can see that one of the processes by which digested food materials such as glucose move into the blood is by diffusion. So diffusion is important when it comes to absorption. So the digested food materials such as amino acids, glucose, move by diffusion from ileum into the bloodstream, and after that they can be transported to majorly the liver before the distribution occurs. So that one brings us to the end of this part 1. Let us reconnect again in part 2.